I never intended to reveal my success at my brother Marcus's wedding. For years, I had kept my true position hidden from my family, letting them believe I worked at a small consulting firm while secretly building an empire. But Marcus's biting words that day changed everything. Standing in the opulent ballroom of the Grand Plaza Hotel, I smoothed my modest navy dress, deliberately chosen to appear understated. Around me, crystal chandeliers cast a warm glow over intricately decorated tables, while waitstaff glided by with champagne flutes. This was the kind of extravagance Marcus loved, an opportunity to flaunt success he believed he had earned. My mother's voice interrupted my thoughts. "There you are. Why aren't you mingling? People are asking about you." Her eyes flicked over my dress with disapproval, her lips pursing slightly, though I suppose there's not much to tell. I took a slow sip of champagne, thinking of the board meeting I had led yesterday, where we finalized the acquisition of our biggest competitor. "I'm fine, Mum. Consulting keeps me busy," she sighed dramatically. "Busy isn't the same as successful, dear. Look at your brother, the youngest vice president in Sterling Industries history, marrying the CEO's daughter. That's real success." I suppressed a smile, knowing Sterling Industries had been struggling lately. In fact, they had been desperately trying to arrange a meeting with my company's CEO me for months. But of course my family didn't know that. They didn't know that the small consulting firm I supposedly worked for was actually Aurora Consulting Group, one of the largest business consulting firms in the country. And they certainly didn't know I wasn't just an employee. I was the founder and CEO. "Sophie," Marcus's voice cut through my thoughts. He approached, champagne in hand, his new bride Jessica clinging to his arm. Still hiding in corners at parties. Some things never change. Jessica giggled, adjusting her designer gown. "Oh, Marcus told me all about your little consulting job. It's so cute how you're trying to make it on your own." I looked at them, remembering everything from 15 years ago. Back then, Marcus was the one struggling, barely passing his classes, while I graduated top of my class. But then Dad stepped in, using connections to land Marcus a starting position at Sterling Industries. Meanwhile, I was told to be realistic about my ambitions. "Someone's got to do the small jobs," Marcus continued, his voice carrying enough for nearby guests to hear. "Poor little sister, still slaving away at that tiny firm while the rest of us build real careers. But at least you can say you're independent, right?" Jessica laughed again, the sound sharp like breaking glass. "Oh, honey, be nice. Not everyone can be as successful as you." I felt the weight of the antique locket my grandmother left me, her final gift before she passed. She was the only one who believed in me, who supported my dreams with more than empty words. "Success comes in many forms," Marcus I said softly. Sure, he waved dismissively. "Speaking of success, did you hear? Sterling's CEO is actually attending the wedding tonight. The James Harrison. He never shows up to employee events. But for me," he puffed out his chest with pride. I knew exactly why James Harrison was attending. He wanted to discuss Aurora's potential acquisition of Sterling Industries, a discussion he'd been trying to schedule with me for weeks. I'd been stalling on purpose, curious to see how desperate they'd get. "Impressive," I murmured, hiding a smile behind my champagne flute. "Just don't embarrass me when he arrives," Marcus added. "Stay in the background. This is big for my career." Before I could respond, a sudden hush fell over the room. James Harrison had arrived, his commanding presence drawing every eye. He was just as I remembered from our video calls, tall, distinguished, with steel-grey hair and sharp eyes that missed nothing. Marcus immediately straightened, pulling Jessica along to prepare to greet his CEO. But before he could take 2 steps, Harrison's gaze landed on me and his face lit up with recognition. Mitchell, he called out loudly, striding straight toward me. "I didn't know you'd be here." Marcus froze, mid-step, confusion spreading across his face. Jessica's perfectly manicured brows furrowed. Madam Harrison continued as he reached me, extending his hand with respect. We've been trying to schedule a meeting with you for weeks. I didn't expect to run into you at an employee's wedding. I felt Marcus's stare boring into me as I shook Harrison's hand. Hello, James. Surprised to see me here. Why not? It's not every day you meet Aurora Consulting CEO at a company wedding. He glanced at Marcus, then back at me, realization dawning. Wait, Marcus is your brother? I nodded, allowing myself a small smile as Marcus's face paled, though he didn't know about my position until just now. The silence that followed was deafening. I saw my mother's hand tremble as she gripped her champagne flute, my father's jaw dropping in shock. But Marcus's expression sealed the moment, a mix of disbelief, embarrassment, and dawning horror, as he realized he'd spent the last hour mocking the person who stood above even his boss's boss. James Harrison glanced between us, clearly trying to process this. Your brother? But he said his sister worked at some small local consulting firm. That's what they all thought, I said, my voice clear in the stunned silence. I never corrected them. Jessica's glass slipped from her hand, shattering on the marble floor. The sound snapped the room out of its trance, and suddenly everyone started talking at once. But I kept my eyes on Marcus, watching his carefully constructed world of arrogance crumble around him. This wasn't how I planned to reveal my success, but standing there watching my family's perception of me shatter like Jessica's glass, I realized sometimes the greatest moments in life are the ones you don't plan. And this was just the beginning. The minutes that followed at the wedding were like a carefully choreographed chaos. My mother, ever obsessed with appearances, tried desperately to salvage the situation. Sophie, darling, she trilled, suddenly appearing at my side. Why didn't you tell us about your position? I took another sip of champagne, savoring the moment. You never asked Mom. You were too busy celebrating Marcus's achievements to care about my little consulting job. James Harrison still stood nearby, looking both amused and uncomfortable. Mitchell? He said, I didn't realize this was a family event for you. Perhaps we could discuss the merger. Merger? Marcus interrupted, his face shifting from shock to panic. He grabbed my arm, his fingers digging in painfully. What merger? I gently pried his hand off, keeping my voice calm. The merger where Aurora Consulting is considering acquiring Sterling Industries. I turned to Harrison, though after tonight I'm rethinking the acquisition. Marcus went pale. Jessica, the new bride, looked like she might faint. But that would make you... My boss, Marcus, stammered. Exactly, I replied. Funny how life turns out, isn't it? My father finally spoke up, pushing through the crowd gathering around us. Hold on, he said, his face flushed. You can't come in here and ruin your brother's wedding with these claims. Harrison cleared his throat. I assure you, your daughter is exactly who she says she is. Aurora Consulting is the largest business consulting firm in the country, and Mitchell built it from nothing. We've been trying to arrange this merger for months. I watched my father's face as the truth sank in. This was the man who 10 years ago told me I was dreaming too big when I wanted to start my own company. The man who used every connection to help Marcus climb the ladder while telling me to be realistic about my goals. But what about the money? My mother stammered. All those times you said you couldn't help with family expenses. You mean the $50,000 from my savings you borrowed for Marcus's MBA? I kept my voice even, but years of resentment bubbled up. The money you never paid back. Because what was it you said Marcus needs it more for his future? Jessica stepped forward, her wedding gown rustling. Marcus, honey, did you know about this? About her company? Of course not, he snapped, then tried to regain composure. She's always been jealous of my success. This must be a mistake. Harrison raised an eyebrow. The only mistake, Mr. Mitchell is your misunderstanding of your sister's place in the business world. Aurora Consulting's annual revenue surpasses Sterling Industries' total profits from the last 5 years combined. The ballroom fell silent. Every guest was watching our family drama unfold like a live theatre performance. Marcus's perfect wedding was quickly becoming the talk of the corporate world, but not for the reasons he'd hoped. I think I said softly, "We should continue this discussion somewhere more private." I nodded to Harrison. "James, would you mind if I spoke with my family alone for a moment?" He nodded politely and stepped away. I led my family to a private room off the main ballroom, closing the door behind us. The silence was deafening. "How dare you?" Marcus finally exploded. "This is my wedding day. You couldn't let me have this one thing." I laughed, but there was no humor in it. "One thing? You've been handed everything your whole life. Dad's connections got you into Sterling. Mom's jewelry paid for your MBA. My savings funded your startup attempts. Meanwhile, I built something real, something lasting entirely on my own. We were just trying to protect you," my mother insisted, wringing her hands. "The business world is so harsh for women." "No, Mum. You weren't protecting me. You were underestimating me. Every achievement, every milestone you brushed aside, because it didn't fit the image you wanted for me." My father stepped forward, his business instincts finally kicking in. "Sophie, let's be reasonable. We're family. Surely we can work out something that benefits everyone. You mean now that you know I'm successful, you want a piece of it?" I shook my head. "The merger with Sterling is a favor to Harrison. He's a good CEO stuck with a bad board." But after tonight, I looked straight into Marcus's eyes. "I think it's time for a change." "You can't do this," Marcus whispered, his last shred of arrogance crumbling. "My position, my future. Your position was always built on sand. Marcus, you lost 3 major clients this year. The only reason you still have a job is because of your connection to Jessica's family." I adjusted my modest navy dress. "But don't worry, when Aurora acquires Sterling, we'll find a position that matches your actual abilities." Jessica let out a small sob. "My father won't let this happen. He's on the board." "Your father," I said gently, called me last week to ensure the merger goes through. Sterling Industries is drowning in debt, and Aurora Consulting is their only lifeline. The gravity of the situation finally seemed to hit Marcus, and he sank into a nearby chair. "All this time while we mocked you, you were building an empire. I tried to tell you so many times, but no one listened. You were too busy planning Marcus's next promotion, too busy upholding the perfect family image." I moved toward the door. "Now that you know the truth, everything changes." "Sophie, please," my mother called as I reached for the handle. "We're still family." I paused, my hand on the knob. Family. Family lifts each other up. Family listens. Family doesn't mock, belittle, and diminish each other. You weren't family when I was struggling. You don't get to claim family now that I've succeeded." With that, I opened the door and stepped back into the ballroom, leaving them to face the new reality of our family. Harrison was waiting for me near the bar, his expression knowing. "Shall we discuss merger terms, Ms. Mitchell?" he asked softly. I nodded, offering a small smile. "Yes, James? I think it's time to reshape Sterling Industries, starting with its management structure." As we walked off to discuss business, I felt my family's eyes on me. The modest navy dress I'd chosen now felt like armor. They had spent years underestimating me, dismissing my achievements, treating me as the family disappointment. But now they knew exactly who I was. And this was only the beginning of their lesson. The weeks following Marcus's wedding were exactly as I expected. A storm of family drama, desperate attempts at reconciliation and not-so-subtle scheming. My phone buzzed constantly with messages. "Sophie, darling, let's talk like family." "Mom, your brother is falling apart. How could you do this to him?" "Dad, we need to talk about my position at Sterling." Marcus, my father wants to meet you. Jessica, I ignored them all. I had a merger to finalize. On the morning of Sterling Industries board meeting, I stood in my top floor office at Aurora Consulting's headquarters, adjusting my blazer. No more modest navy dress today. I wore a tailored black Armani suit radiating power and authority. No more hiding. My assistant Emma knocked on the door. Your brother's here again, Missy. Mitchell. Third time this week. I sighed, glancing at my watch. Let him in. Let's get this over with before the board meeting. Marcus walked in looking haggard, a far cry from his usual polished self. His designer suit was wrinkled, his tie askew. Sophie, please. You have to listen to me. I'm listening, I said, sitting behind my desk. Though I'm not sure what's left to say after 20 voicemails and 37 text messages. He ran a hand through his hair. Look, I know I was awful at the wedding. I know I belittled your work, but you can't take Sterling Industries. My whole life is there. Your whole life, I repeated, slowly was handed to you. Every opportunity, every promotion, every success, all arranged by Dad or paid for with someone else's money, often mine. That's not fair, he said. Not fair? I stood, placing my hands on the desk. Not fair is taking my savings for your MBA without asking. Not fair is mocking my little company while I built an empire. Not fair is treating me like a failure while I achieved more than you could ever imagine. I'm sorry, he whispered. And for the first time, I thought he might mean it. Sorry doesn't undo the past, Marcus. And it doesn't change what's coming. I glanced at my watch. The board meeting starts in an hour. You should prepare. What happens to me? I sat back down, studying him. That depends on you. Aurora, consulting rewards, competence, not connections. If you want to keep a position at Sterling after the merger, you'll have to earn it. Truly earn it. I raised a hand to stop him as he started to protest. Or take a severance package. Your choice. At that moment, the office door burst open. My parents stormed in, ignoring Emma's attempts to stop them. Sophie, my mother began, her voice trembling. We've been trying to reach you for weeks. I've been busy, I said coolly. Running my little company takes a lot of effort. My father stepped forward, his face set in negotiation mode. Sweetheart, we need to talk rationally. You can't destroy your brother's career over past misunderstandings. Misunderstandings. I laughed. You call years of being belittled and disrespected misunderstandings. We were wrong, my mother admitted, wringing her hands. But we're family. Surely that means something. I opened my desk drawer and pulled out an old photo, the last family portrait before I started Aurora Consulting. In it, I stood slightly apart, wearing a simple dress while everyone else wore designer clothes. Even then, I was an outsider in my own family. Family meant something when I needed support to start my company. It meant something when I was working 18-hour days to build it. It meant something when you celebrated Marcus's small promotions while ignoring my major achievements. I set the photo down. But now it's just business. Emma knocked again. Miss Mitchell. The board is assembling. I stood adjusting my blazer. Thank you, Emma. I'll be right there. I turned to my family. You're welcome to stay and watch the meeting on the screen in the waiting area. I think it'll be educational. The Sterling Industries boardroom was silent as I walked in. 15 pairs of eyes followed me to the head of the table where James Harrison stood to greet me. Mitchell, thank you for joining us. Shall we begin? The next hour was a masterclass in corporate restructuring. I laid out Aurora's plan for Sterling department by department, position by position. By the end, some board members were nodding in approval. Others looked shell-shocked. And finally, I concluded, we'll overhaul the entire management structure. No more positions based on connections over competence. Through the glass wall, I could see my family watching from the waiting area. Marcus had his head in his hands. My parents stood frozen, finally grasping the full extent of my power. After the meeting, Harrison approached. "Excellent presentation as always. Though I must ask, your brother's position will be handled fairly," I assured him. "If he's willing to work, there's a place for him in low-level sales." Harrison nodded approvingly. "You're more generous than most in your position." "It's not about revenge," I said, gathering my papers. "It's about building something lasting, something real." As I stepped into the waiting area, my family was still there. They looked different now, smaller, less intimidating than they had all those years. "So that's it?" Marcus asked quietly. "Everything changes just like that." "Everything changed a long time ago, Marcus. You didn't notice because you were too busy looking down on me." I turned to my parents. "The company will send new employment contracts tomorrow. You should read them carefully." "Sophie," my mother stepped forward, tears in her eyes. "We were wrong about you. So wrong. Can we start over?" I thought about the family dinners where they ignored my achievements, the gatherings where I was treated as lesser, the times they prioritized Marcus's ambitions over my dreams. "Starting over means forgetting the past," I said. "And I don't want to forget. Those years of being belittled and disrespected had taught me valuable lessons about self-reliance and determination. They made me who I am today." "And who are you?" my father asked softly. "I'm the woman who built a billion-dollar company while you all mocked her little firm. I'm the CEO who just acquired the company you thought was the pinnacle of success. And I'm the daughter who finally stopped seeking your approval and found her own path." I walked toward the elevator, then paused to look at them. "The contracts will arrive tomorrow. It's up to you whether you sign them. But either way, things will never be the same." As the elevator doors closed, I glanced at my family one last time. They stood in the waiting area of the company I built, seeing me clearly for the first time. That night in my penthouse office, I took out my grandmother's locket, the one family heirloom I truly cherished. Inside was a note she'd written years ago. "Success isn't about who believes in you at the end. It's about believing in yourself from the start." I smiled, thinking of the journey I'd taken from the forgotten daughter in the family portrait. Marcus's wedding was just the beginning. Now they knew exactly who I was. Not the family disappointment, but the force that reshaped their entire world. And that felt better than any revenge.